Your question dealt with the change. We've had a change in political structure, but we have not had a heavy change in the actual souls of people.
Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on.
Some photographers use their camera to express artistic creativity. Ernest Withers saw his camera as a tool used to document history, and his photographs give visual proof of history's greatest lessons.
I've had so many conversations with people now about what were you thinking when you shot that shot? Can I reenact 5 million shots? If I could do that, I just can't think of that precise moment.
Although he couldn't remember all the pictures he took, he always seemed to know the story behind every single image.
Legacy isn't about being famous. It's about what gets passed down when you're no longer in the room. The Legacy line was created to celebrate the people, stories, and moments that define American culture. Too many of our stories sit in museums and archives, seen by a few, but forgotten by most. We're turning that history into everyday items you can hold, and we're bringing it to life via augmented reality to make sure our stories remain visible and valued. The Legacy line. Everyday products, extraordinary legacy.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. If we could have you take your seats. Good afternoon. I have the distinct pleasure of hosting today's event. And I know this is going to be a phenomenal opportunity to continue to hear our story. I've been a part of the birthing of this project for over a year now. I've had a front seat, literally. From drives back and forth to Nashville with Layron Walker, the CEO of Legacy Line, who you will meet in just a moment, he shared his passion and discussions he's had with Roz Withers, who is the daughter of Ernest Withers, who curated a lot of the images that you'll see around the room. I had an opportunity to hear all the stories and the passion and the determination. And so about the 6th trip to Nashville with Layron, I said, what can I do to help? And he said, as if he already had an elevator speech, he said, I need your help. I need to have Ambassador Andrew Young in a room for this conversation. And I also need Ryan Wilson, who is the CEO and co-founder of The Gathering Spot, to moderate the conversation. But it just so happens that Ambassador Andrew Young has been a friend of mine for over 15 years. We met in Jacksonville, Florida, when I had the opportunity to moderate a conversation with him at Johnson & Johnson. And Ryan Wilson happens to be a friend of mine as well, and a fellow member of this cohort, 2026 of Leadership Atlanta. So it was an easy ask. I went to both of them, and because of relationships and the importance of connections, they both said yes. And I want to thank Layron Walker's team, Rosalind Withers' team, and Ryan Wilson's team at The Gathering Spot for bringing this event together. So, we are here at The Gathering Spot, and what the perfect name for a venue for an occasion such as this. We are here today convening to continue to hear and read and learn about our history. So today, as we gather here, it is important for you to know and remember that history continues because someone tells it. Someone writes it, someone paints it, someone archives it, someone protects it, and then someone chooses to pass it on. In this room today, we are those someones. We are witness, we are storytellers, and we are stewards of a legacy that demands both remembrance and recognition. So as we steward this conversation today, let's all decide how we'll continue to tell our story. So now, I'd like to bring to the stage the Mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Valerie, for that introduction, and thank you all for being here today. We started off this morning, all of us, with the sad news of the passing of the one and only Reverend Jesse Jackson, a real freedom fighter, someone who stood up for justice, freedom, liberation, and opportunity for everyone, economic inclusion, economic justice, this candidate for president, this Rainbow Push Coalition founder, this leader among leaders. As we entered this morning, it is the sad news that we received the notice of his passing at 84 years old. But thank God for those 84 years that we had with Reverend Jesse Jackson and all that he did. He loved Atlanta, Atlanta loved him, and he gave his all to the world. So with that in mind, I ask that we pause for a moment of silence for the one and only Reverend Jesse Jackson. Amen. And if you would, in the spirit of Jesse Jackson, follow with me. Say, I am somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. All right. It is my privilege to be here today with all of you and bring greetings on behalf of the people of Atlanta. And while we may have tragically lost Jesse Jackson, thank God we still have the one and only Ambassador Andrew Young, a living legend. It's great to still be able to share space and conversations with Ambassador Andrew Young. Is that not right, Mayor Reed? And I know Mayor Campbell is here. We all just had a great conversation with Ambassador Young about Reverend Jesse Jackson and about how much we still adore to be able to have connection and opportunity to talk daily with Ambassador Andrew Young. And he, with the descendants of those who stood, marched, organized, and memorialized the movement on film and on paper. As a son of this city, I grew up hearing the stories of how Atlanta became the cradle of the civil rights movement. These were stories of famous names, but also stories about neighbors, teachers, parents, good old ordinary people who stepped up in the midst of extraordinary times. Some raised their voices, some raised their pens, and some raised their cameras, but everyone had a part to play. They were all talking and taking part in a battle that would change this nation, but none of them was in it for the glory and certainly not in it for the riches. Fast forward to today, their descendants have memories. They have photographs, stories, and speeches. What they should also have is the right to preserve their history however they see fit. That's where Legacy Line comes in. This is a subsidiary of Mimic Incorporated, a homegrown business that has been supported by Invest Atlanta, and I serve as the chairman of that board, by Invest Atlanta Startup Growth Loan Fund to be able to help them be able to finance this that we are going to see. And they are now helping families preserve their legacy and build sustainable economic benefit. This afternoon, you will hear from Ambassador Young and relatives of those who were literally in the room when it all happened. You will also hear from those who know that history and who know that it is much more than just a memory. These are the folks who understood intellectual property and ethical stewardship of it. It is fitting that this work is happening right here in Atlanta. After all, our city helped shape a movement that reshaped our nation. And so we will always be deeply grateful to those who came before us, those who got into good trouble, those who kept hope alive, and for the sake of justice and equality. And as we continue to build a city of true opportunity for all, we support the work of families to transform historic contributions into sustainable economic benefit and storytelling. Thank you for being here, everyone, and I really hope you enjoy this important conversation that's going to take place today and forever. God bless you.
Thank you, Mayor Andre Dickens, for those words. Could we have our former mayors of the city of Atlanta please stand so that we can honor and recognize you? Thank you so much for being here. We'll play a bit of music and then we'll come back to you with the next featured attendee. Thank you.
the change. We've had a change in political structure, but we have not had a heavy change in the actual souls of people.
Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on.
Some photographers use their camera to express artistic creativity. Ernest Withers saw his camera as a tool used to document history, and his photographs give visual proof of history's greatest lessons.
In photography, I've had so many conversations with people now about what were you thinking when you shot that shot? I can't. Can I reenact 5 million shots? If I could do that, I just can't think of that precise moment.
Although he couldn't remember all the pictures he took, he always seemed to know the story behind every single image.
Legacy isn't about being famous. It's about what gets passed down when you're no longer in the room. The Legacy line was created to celebrate the people, stories, and moments that define American culture. Too many of our stories sit in museums and archives, seen by a few, but forgotten by most. We're turning that history into everyday items you can hold, and we're bringing it to life via augmented reality to make sure our stories remain visible and valued. The Legacy line. Everyday products, extraordinary legacy.
beautiful structure, but we have not had a heavy change in the actual souls of people.
Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on.
Some photographers use their camera to express artistic creativity. Ernest Withers saw his camera as a tool used to document history, and his photographs give visual proof of history's greatest lessons.
In photography, I've had so many conversations with people now about what were you thinking when you shot that shot? I can't. Can I reenact 5 million shots? If I could do that, I just can't think of that precise moment.
Although he couldn't remember all the pictures he took, he always seemed to know the story behind every single image.
Legacy isn't about being famous. It's about what gets passed down when you're no longer in the group. The Legacy line was created to celebrate the people, stories, and moments that define American culture. Too many of our stories sit in museums and archives, seen by a few, but forgotten by most. We're turning that history into everyday items you can hold, and we're bringing it to life via augmented reality to make sure our stories remain visible and valued. The Legacy line. Everyday products, extraordinary legacy.
a change. We've had a change in political structure, but we have not had a heavy change in the actual souls of people.
Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on.
Some photographers use their camera to express artistic creativity. Ernest Withers saw his camera as a tool used to document history, and his photographs give visual proof of history's greatest lessons.
In photography, I've had so many conversations with people now about what were you thinking when you shot that shot? I can't. Can I reenact 5 million shots? If I could do that, I just can't think of that precise moment.
Although he couldn't remember all the pictures he took, he always seemed to know the story behind every single image.
Legacy isn't about being famous. It's about what gets passed down when you're no longer in the room. The Legacy line was created to celebrate the people, stories, and moments that define American culture. Too many of our stories sit in museums and archives, seen by a few, but forgotten by most. We're turning that history into everyday items you can hold, and we're bringing it to life via augmented reality to make sure our stories remain visible and valued. The Legacy line. Everyday products, extraordinary legacy.
dealt with the change. We've had a change in political structure, but we have not had a heavy change in the actual souls of people.
Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on.
Some photographers use their camera to express artistic creativity. Ernest Withers saw his camera as a tool used to document history, and his photographs give visual proof of history's greatest lessons.
In photography, I've had so many conversations with people now about what were you thinking when you shot that shot? I can't. Can I reenact 5 million shots? If I could do that, I just can't think of that precise moment.
Although he couldn't remember all the pictures he took, he always seemed to know the story behind every single image.
Legacy isn't about being famous. It's about what gets passed down when you're no longer in the room. The Legacy line was created to celebrate the people, stories, and moments that define American culture. Too many of our stories sit in museums and archives, seen by a few, but forgotten by most. We're turning that history into everyday items you can hold, and we're bringing it to life via augmented reality to make sure our stories remain visible and valued. The Legacy line. Everyday products, extraordinary legacy.
dealt with the change. We've had a change in political structure, but we have not had a heavy change in the actual souls of people.
Let us stand with a greater determination. Let us move on.
Some photographers use their camera to express artistic creativity. Ernest Withers saw his camera as a tool used to document history, and his photographs give visual proof of history's greatest lessons.
In photography, I've had so many conversations with people now about what were you thinking when you shot that shot? I can't. Can I reenact 5 million shots? If I could do that, I just can't think of that precise moment.
Although he couldn't remember all the pictures he took, he always seemed to know the story behind every single image.
Legacy isn't about being famous. It's about what gets passed down when you're no longer in the group. The Legacy line was created to celebrate the people, stories, and moments that define American culture. Too many of our stories sit in museums and archives, seen by a few but forgotten by most. We're turning that history into everyday items you can hold, and we're bringing it to life via augmented reality to make sure our stories remain visible and valued. The Legacy line. Everyday products, extraordinary legacy.
stage. Yeah. Thank you, girl. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you so much. Hopefully, you had an opportunity to mingle, watch the videos that we're showing, but now we're going to get back to our program. And I'm excited to introduce our next guest. She's an up-and-coming singer, actress, but most of all, she is an academic scholar. She's a young star that's going to come before us in just a moment. But what I'm excited about is that she is our future generation. She will be a torchbearer to keep this message going about all the important work of our people. So at this time, I'd like to bring to the stage Miss Eris Harris.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on to victory. Let us march on to victory. His Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me.
Can we get one more round for Miss Eris Harris? And there's no question of where that voice comes from. She had no choice. So before I turn it over to our moderator for the day, I'd like to try this once again. May we have all of the former mayors of Atlanta to please stand. I saw a couple of others in the room earlier, so maybe they stepped out. At this time, I'd like to turn this event over to the moderator, who needs no real introduction. He's a dear friend of mine. He is the co-founder and president of The Gathering Spot. And I believe before Ryan takes the stage, we have a video from the mayor of Memphis, Paul Young.
Hello, I'm Memphis Mayor Paul Young, and I wish I could be with you today for this extraordinary gathering. When history was watching reminds us that the defining moments of the civil rights movement were visible, documented, and carried forward by people who understood the weight of their actions. Ernest C. Withers captured those moments with precision and purpose. His photographs stand amongst the most significant visual records of the movement in our nation. Through his lens, we see courage, we see resolve, we see faith. We see the faces of people who believed the future could be better and acted to make it so. From sanitation workers to freedom riders, from church gatherings to historic courtrooms, his archive of more than 1.8 million images preserves the heartbeat of a movement. Some of those powerful images include foundational leaders like Medgar Evers and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This gathering today during Black History Month reminds us that history is not static, it's active. It lives in our institutions, in our economic structures, and in our cultural capital. The Legacy Lines partnership with the Withers family shows how work rooted in Memphis and inspired by its civil rights history can honor the past while driving meaningful economic impact through innovation, ownership, and the responsible stewardship of cultural archives. Memphis is proud that the Withers Collection Gallery calls Beale Street home. Housing this archive on that historic street anchors this history in the very city where so much of it unfolded, and it allows visitors to encounter it in a place forever tied to the movement. I applaud the technology and the innovation. I'm honored by the invitation to celebrate with you, and I'm grateful to Ambassador Andrew Young, the Evers, King, and Withers families, and all the leaders who continue this stewardship. Though I can't be there in person, on behalf of the city of Memphis, I thank you for honoring one of our own and for advancing a dialogue that strengthens both our cities and our collective legacy. May this event inspire collaboration, courage, and continued commitment to truth. God bless you, and may God continue to bless Atlanta, Memphis, and all those committed to preserving the story.
Okay. Yo, you normally do this at the end, thank yous, but I have to do 3 quick ones before we get started. The first thank you is to the Legacy Line team. Thank you so much for the vision to not only assemble us here together, but as you will hear today, to do some work that really is going to make a tremendous impact in just being able to remember and tell our stories. Second thank you is to you all. Y'all are my type of folks. It's in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. During Black History Month, I was standing here when he said Black History Month. I'm like, wow, look at us during Black History Month, which actually brings me to my third thank you to Ambassador Andrew Young. Absolutely. You could be anywhere in the world, and you are here with us in the middle of the day on a Tuesday talking about our history, and we appreciate you for it. Y'all, this first conversation, and I hope that you know, today's discussion is around a set of archives that I believe the number is at 1.8 million photos. Am I getting that number correct? 1.8 million photos that Dr. Ernest Withers has left for us to be able to discuss, right? And so part of what we're going to do in this first discussion is to walk through some of those moments. I pulled some photos before we began. I believe this is the 4th time that we've had the chance to sit down like this. And I'm going to get out of the way, y'all. If there's an ask that I have, though, if you have a question, we will have time for Q&A. I'll explain how we'll do it later in the day. But thank you, sincerely. Let's jump in. We have 2 folks, though, that are joining us for this conversation, and I don't see them. Oh, y'all are right here. Sorry, y'all, I just work here. I barely know. Please join me in welcome Rosalind Withers and Rena Evers Everett. I didn't see you. Good to see you.
Yes.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yes, Rosalind and Christine.
So these women are the daughters of 2 extraordinary icons in our community. Rosalind Withers is the daughter of the legendary civil rights photographer Ernest C. Withers. And yes. And Rena Evers Everett is the daughter of Medgar Evers.
And Merle.
Ambassador Young, I'm going to start with you. You are so loved by this community and have been so documented over time, right? Many of those moments are in the back of this room. How does it feel to be able to be in a room with so many of the important moments, not only of your life, but of our history as a people, all here today? How does it feel? What does this moment feel like for you?
Well, the last time I think I was here.
Mine is not. Here you go.
The last time I was here, it was just about this crowded, but Kamala Harris was here speaking. And I looked around and I said, if the people in this room had gotten 10 more each, that we'd be in a different shape. And this is not a study of the past. This is reminding you of how we got to where we are. And if you look at these photos and you realize that we've been through many dangers, toils, and snares, we've already come. It was grace that brought us thus far, and faith will see us home. And so, whenever I see this many smart, rich, and if you don't think you're rich, remember your grandmama. And you are rich. You are educated. You are in a city where 60% of the citizens have been to college. That's not an accident. And it's because people were determined. People used whatever skills and talents they had. Brother Withers didn't have a lot of money, but he had a damn good camera, and usually 3 or 4 of them with him. And he was always snapping everywhere. And I don't know, but I still remember and cherish many of those moments because it reminds us how far we've come. But it should also remind us that we can go even further if we have the same vitality, energy, and vision that you see in these photographs. So we're not studying the past. We're creating the future.
Amen. Ms. Withers, I'm going to go to you. Your father photographed leaders and everyday people with the same care. I think you can see it in the photos that are here in the room and on the screen. How do you see his role in the movement and reflect?
Well, what's reflected behind me is some of those leaders. We have John Lewis, and to his back is Julian Bolden and Jim Lawson. Ambassador Young refers to them as boots on the ground. These are the ones that made a difference in opening a lot of doors. Then we have Fred Shuttleworth, and I'm sure if we have any from Alabama in the house, we can recognize his contributions as well. But the actual history of their contribution comes from this voice who was present. So I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about that far right image. I'm going to talk about that because it represents my father's commitment, and we're going to give that a minute too. But let him reflect on these two.
You know, these are the people who helped me to understand nonviolence. John Lewis started preaching to the chickens when he was about 6 years old. Jim Lawson got moved as a teenager not to kill anybody and not to want to kill anybody. So he refused to go to the military, and instead they sentenced him to serve 3 years in India, and he studied Mahatma Gandhi. And it was Jim Lawson that came back to Fisk and said to the students there, nobody's busy at 6 o'clock in the morning. And so any of you all who want to be about the business of earning your freedom and the freedom of your parents and children, then you need to come and start meeting with me at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's where the Nashville sit-in story started. And I was in New York, and I had a good job. And I just bought a house in Queens. And the Nashville sit-in story came on television. And I had bought a bottle of wine, and the fireplace was going, the children in bed, and I laid the bottle down and 2 glasses, and Jean and I started looking at what was going on in Nashville. After the first break, she said, I'm ready to go home. I said, you are home. She said, no, this is New York. I will never be at home in New York. I want to go down where things are happening. And she was 8.5 months pregnant. We already had 2 children. And I said, well, what's going to happen? She said, I don't know. I'm going to finish my master's thesis. And she could afford a master's thesis in New York because Queens College only charged $18 for a semester. That was all registration was. So the Lord gave her a master's degree, the 3rd baby, and then she said to me, now when I get ready to travel, I'm going back to my mama. And I said, and what am I going to do? She said, I don't know, but I hope you will sell this house, quit this job, and find some way to get a job down south where things are happening. And that's how I got to Atlanta in 1961. She was a tough broad. She left. There was no discussion. I'm going home. And I hope you man enough to join me.
Speaking of that, Ambassador, I have one question. Then my next question,
I still have an answer to.
Oh, please, yeah.
Yes, and that's that last piece. I'm going to have to turn around, so please excuse me, because I want to read this because it's very powerful. To my left is a preface of a self-published book that covered the Emmett Till trial, and I'm going to ask Deborah Watts to stand for a second and just say hello to the audience. She's the cousin of Emmett Till. Right here. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah, for being here. But this story impacts something that keeps me going. And I tell you, there are some days that it gets tough. But when you read this last paragraph, you're going to really relate to our day. I'm going to turn around so I can read it because I want to emphasize it. And then I'm going to point out some very important things about where we are. This last paragraph, it says in brief, we are presenting this photo story not as an attempt to stir up racial animosity or to question the verdict in the Emmett Till case, but in the hope that this booklet might serve to help our nation dedicate itself to seeing that such an incident need not occur again. To this end, we dedicate this pamphlet. Ernest C. Withers, photographer. This pamphlet is an individual project, and it is not sponsored by any organization of any type. Entire content, 1955, copyrighted by Ernest Withers. My father was 33 years old when this happened. So people ask me often, did he know what he was doing? You tell me.
I want to map this conversation onto the present day. We're having this conversation in the context where there's a lot going on, and I think that's fair to say. Ambassador Young, I'll ask you first. Given the context, right, that we again are having this discussion in, what do you want folks to know about this time period that is applicable to what we are seeing and experiencing right now?
I don't have to say a word. You just look at the picture. Just look at it. It could be Minnesota. It could be Atlanta. It could be Chicago. It could be Phoenix. It could be anywhere in America and anywhere on the planet where people don't realize that freedom is not free. Yes. It's something you have to organize to protect, something you have to vote to implement, and something that will really determine your happiness and your success in life. This is going to school, but just like you take a textbook and you look at the pictures from the past to try to understand your role in the future, that's what these shots do. And those of us who were around have memories with just about every picture. Most of them are good because the amazing thing to me is how we went all over America and all over the world without guns, with no anger, with faith in God and in the Spirit of Jesus Christ within us. But we learned that from some of that from Gandhi, who was a Hindu, and some of the earliest supporters of Martin Luther King happened to be Muslims. And it's this period is life in miniature. And you look at this, and this is what Brother Withers saw. But you can imagine what you will have to deal with if we don't do something to prevent things from going backwards.
Amen. Ms. Rena, I'm going to go to you. The one thing about looking at photos, right, is that, and I will admit I'm guilty of this in many ways, right? We can look at these photos and seem to forget sometimes that these are real people, right? that had real families and things that existed beyond just the moments that we're able to view now. So your father was Medgar Evers, an icon, an absolute legend in our community. What do you wish people knew, though, about him as a person, as a man, that maybe isn't fully represented in the pictures that we're seeing?
I always have to say hi to my dad. Hey, Daddy, I love you. Thank you for acknowledging that, because it's a family affair. And the family affair doesn't mean that it's blood. It means that it's family that's connected. It means that it's family that comes into your life, into the circle, that you didn't know really made an impact until later on in your life. I was 8.5 when my father was assassinated by a bigot, racist, whichever way you want to go. But that's what he is, and he called himself that. I was privileged to know and so honored to be on stage with Ambassador Young. To have him within our family. And earlier you mentioned, Ryan, that I'm the daughter of Medgar. I'm the daughter of Medgar and Merle. Okay? And I say that for several reasons. She's an icon within our own right. But if you heard Ambassador Young talk about his strength in Queens, New York, and who did he follow home to do the work he needed to do? It was the family that pulled, that made you have that courage to move one step in front of the other, because you're doing it for the greaterment of all, not just one. And being a family member and being able to remember my good friend Yolanda King running around at conventions being told by people, now you need to stop because you know who you are, right? And at that time, you're 10 years old, you don't know who you are, but you have to respect what your elders are telling you and the way that you were raised. And we as people, I don't care what color you are, bleed the same. We also, whether you want to really get down deep into it, understand that truth is hurtful. And so looking at these pictures, going through the memories, it is a nonstop picturama in your memory at all times. Whether it's good pictures like this, because knowing, if you look at that picture, who do you see? Not one person. You see all these powerful men working together for the greater good of truth, to make sure that freedom comes to all. And I've heard several people, including my father, and now Ambassador Young, say freedom is not free. And we need to embrace that and understand that and move forward with the action of making freedom a mainstay, making us understand that these pictures, what is it about 1,000 pictures, 1,000 words? They tell the truth. So I thank Roz and the Withers Collection and the Legacy Collection for making sure that our history not only stays present in understanding from the past, but making sure that our future, not that we see right now, but our future in people that we won't see, will understand by pictures and then by oral history. Now, I went a little bit too far with that, so I'm going to stop. But I thank you for the truth. And we have to embrace it as much as we don't like to. So I ask all of us, call to action is find the truth. Put it out there and keep stepping towards hope.
Roz, I'm going to ask you a similar question, right? And I like this idea of the truth, right? These photos tell the truth. The collection tells the truth. From your seat, what is that truth? What do you wish folks to know when you think about the entirety of the collection? 1.8 million photos.
This is a glimpse of it. This is a glimpse of it. This is the archive. As been stated, we have 1.8 million images. You've only seen what most people know what an iceberg is, right? Yeah. Only the tip. We've only digitized less than 1%, so we got 99% to go. There is so much history. And we have had the privilege of working with some partnerships in Memphis, Rhodes College, to help us to organize it. And it is organized in such a way now, we are ready to fly with the digitalization process.
Ambassador Gregory, I'm going to ask you one more question. We're going to take a quick commercial break after this, y'all, and then there's another conversation that we will have. Oh, no, please, I just work here, so.
I just want him to give the audience some history of the Boots program.
Take your time. I don't have anywhere to be. I don't know about y'all. I will be here.
There are just some courageous individuals that I want investors to know into. There are some courageous individuals that he must share this history. And I am my button.
Where do you want us to land?
I tell you what, we'll find it here, but you can start. That's CT. Tell us about CT Vivian.
Well, CT Vivian was born in Ohio, I think. And I don't know where he learned about nonviolence, but he's the first person I know that went to jail protesting. He wasn't in the South, but he was a Baptist preacher, and he worked for the Baptist. Publishing company in Nashville. So when he came back to Nashville, he and Jim Lawson had already been protesting in Ohio, and they came together to Fisk and Tennessee State and mobilize the students that gave us a pretty complete view of nonviolence. the thing about nonviolence is, and the difference between what we did in the 60s and what they're doing now is we don't have the chance to prepare. That things happen and we're in the street in 30 minutes. That's not bad, but it's not as good as Jim Lawson and C.T. Vivian and John Lewis and James Bevel and Diane Nash and Marion Barry taking several weeks at 6 o'clock in the morning. And you're between a rock and a hard place. I was asleep at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know whether I would have gotten up to go to a meeting because I was young and trifling. But in our colleges, there's always something happening. There was a Nigerian at Howard University, and I was running down the dormitory halls, and he was about 6'5", and he reached out and he grabbed me by the back of my neck, and he said, "Young man, slow down. You need to get yourself together. You could be somebody." And I said, "Who is this nigga?" And then they told me that he had a double major in chemistry and physics and a double minor in psychology and something. He finished Howard University in 3 years, summa cum laude. He went on to McGill in Canada and went to medical school. And he went back to Nigeria and taught medicine and helped to develop the Nigerian medical school in Ibadan. And he was a super nigga. And he grabbed me and he said, "Son, you could be somebody if you slow down." And I never forgot that. And that was one of the things that I got at Howard University and that you get in HBCUs. I met people from all over the world. So that I had a sense of what was going on in the world when I got out of college. And I got out of college, oh thank you Lordy, but I had picked up an education just from the kind of people I met. And it's one of the things that has brought us together all over the world and made it possible for us to be a little better and make our children even better than we are.
Ambassador, I'm going to ask you one question, one final question in this segment, and it's a question that's about action, right? If I look at these photos, there's an urgency to this moment, right? That you can almost feel through the photos. For those of us that want to replicate, right, this urgency, right, this need to actually try to not admire the problems that exist in our community, but solve them. What words of encouragement, advice, what good knowing do we need to have to make
it? Ass and work.
Amen.
And I was on my ass, and I wasn't working. I screwed up in college. I graduated, oh, thank you, Lord. And I think if I'd made one more D, I'd have flunked out rather than graduated. But Howard University was an HBCU that made it possible for me to meet people all over the world, from all over the world. And so when I got out and got into Congress, anywhere I went, I knew somebody. And when I got to the UN, it was even better. because I could decide where I was going. And whatever I got there helped me to get by in 151 countries that I visited. And that translates into dollars. When we talked about bringing the Olympics here, even most of my staff in City Hall said, no, we can't do that. We'll end up, well, Montreal was still $700 million in debt when we were thinking about getting the Olympics. They said, no, you kill the city financially. And I looked down the list, and there were 85 countries that had a vote. And I put a little dot by everybody where I knew somebody. And it turned out that I knew somebody in 59 of the 85. Now, I didn't study my books, but I was reading the brothers and sisters in my HBCU. And we were able to get those votes, put them together with the Hispanic votes that Roberto Goizueta, Coca-Cola could influence, and the Russian votes that Ted Turner put on the Goodwill Games because the U.S. pulled out of the Olympics. And so Russia really loved Ted Turner. Well, Ted Turner was CNN. CNN was Atlanta. And so we got all the Russian votes. And we put together an Olympic Games for $2.5 billion. Black and female business partners got 41% of that money. And we ended up raising not $1 billion, but $2.5 billion. And we had almost $100 million left over that helped to go into Centennial Park downtown. And so things happen as a result of our interchange and interactions with problems. And a problem is an opportunity to do something better than is being done.
Problem is an opportunity. Okay, we're going to take 30 seconds. Please do not go anywhere. We're going to reset. We have a couple of folks that we want to add to this conversation. Please do not go anywhere. We will finish up again in no longer than a minute. We'll be right back. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move into a second part of this discussion. The first part of our discussion, as you heard us talk about, was more focused on history, right? We're reflecting on history into the present day, but this really is going to be about stewardship, right? This conversation is about stewardship and ownership, and to have it, we've added 3 esteemed new guests. Malika Berry, who is the Assistant Archivist at the King Library and Archives. Absolutely. Eric Tidwell, who is the licensing manager of the estate of Martin Luther King Jr. And Mr. Walker, the CEO of Legacy Line. We're glad you're here, the person that's convened us all today. Ambassador Young, I'm going to go back to you, though, for this first question. And we talked about it a little bit, but I want to double click on one very important dynamic. If you look at a lot of the photos that are in this room, there was a very specific police dynamic that existed during the time. There's also a very specific police dynamic that exists during this time. So I want to focus specifically on that dynamic. What was happening then in terms of the movement's interaction with police, and how does that translate into the current present moment with what we are experiencing by way of policing and law enforcement?
Well, that's a big question. Let me try to break it down. One, we never saw the police as our enemies. Even when they were all white and no black folk. My dad had raised, I was born in a neighborhood where there were 3 black families on our street, but only me and Walter as the only kids. And my dad's advice was, you don't get mad, get smart. Don't let anybody make you lose your temper. He said, your mind is the most powerful weapon you have. And he said, for instance, and I watched him, say, when the policeman stopped him for running a stop sign, he saw the name on his badge, and he didn't pout or complain. He said, no, Officer so-and-so, I saw the stop sign, but there was nothing going right and left, so I didn't shift. Those were the days we had to shift gears. He said you were supposed to go from third to come back to first at a stop sign. He said I didn't do that. But he would never let that man make him feel inferior. And he was a dentist, and he had Dr. So-and-so, Andrew Young, on his license plate and his license, and he said, are you going to the hospital, doctor? He said, no, I'm taking my kids to the movies. He just would not let anybody make him do something wrong. And his motto for me and all of us was, don't get mad, get smart. If you lose your temper in a fight, you lose the fight. Your mind is the most powerful thing you have. And I can tell story after story of how, my first movement was Albany, Georgia. And I went in there, and the sheriff behind the desk, when I was chief of police, said, there's a little nigga out there that wants to see them big niggas back there. And I asked him, I said, I'd like to see Dr. King and Rep. Abernathy. And that's the way he shouted. There's a little nigga out here wants to see them big niggas back there. What do I do? And somebody said, send him back. So when I told Dr. King that, he said, look, that's your problem. He said, I got more problems than I can handle back here. And and you got to find a way to get in here at least twice a day. And so you better figure out how to deal with him. Well, I remember my daddy. And when I went out, I saw his name on his name tag, and I said, "Thank you very much, Sergeant Hamilton." And just addressing him by name, he acted different. The next day I came in, I said, "How you doing, Sergeant Hamilton?" And he woke up. And then I said, "You know, you're a pretty big guy." I said, "You had to play football somewhere." And he smiled. He said, "Yeah, I was a tackle at Valdosta State." Well, I had heard that Valdosta State's tackles were bigger than the ones that won the first Super Bowl. And so we started talking about football. And then I said, "Look, is it okay for me to go back and see Dr. King and Rev Avenue?" "Oh, yeah, go ahead, have fun." I came back and I said, "Where you heading this afternoon?" He said, "I think I'm going to try a little fishing." And so we talked about fishing. So between football and fishing, in one day, I had made a friend. The second day, Chief Pritchett was complaining to him, "Why is it that you all talk and laugh and he doesn't ever come say anything to me?" And he said, "Would you mind going to see the sheriff?" I said, and I said, "No, I didn't." I go in there, and this is the man that's supposed to be the one who crushed Martin Luther King. And he's asking me, "Do you think I could ask Dr. King if he would ask Bobby Kennedy to make me a federal marshal?" He said, I just married. My wife is a Catholic, and she doesn't like me doing all this kind of stuff I'm doing, and she would like to get me out of here." And I said, "Well, I don't think the way it is with Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy." I said, "He's kind of pissed off at Bobby Kennedy himself, because Bobby Kennedy is the one that put him in here." And I said, "But but thinking about it, keep thinking about it." A couple of months later, I got a call from High Point, North Carolina, a friend of mine. And he said, "Do you know that son of a bitch that you were down there in Albany, Georgia?" I said, "Oh, Chief Pritchett." He said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you know he applied for the job as chief of police here in High Point and said he wants to get out of Albany. And he put you down as a reference." And I said, "Well, look," I said, "well, what are you all trying to do?" He said, "Well, we really want to integrate our police force." And I said, "Well, stop and think a minute. This is a man whose racist credentials established all over the world. If he wants to help you integrate your police force, you're not going to have any trouble helping integrate your police force." And I said, "Why don't you invite him in and, talk to him? You decide." He went to High Point, left Albany, and stayed there about 10 years, totally integrated the police force, and he got in some trouble for something else, but it wasn't race. And wonder what it was. Later, 10 years later, I was in the Congress, and I went to speak up in Maine at a country club. And I spoke, and when I got through, this tall, skinny guy in a green jacket like he had just won Augusta, and white flannel, white pants, and white buckskin shoes. Looked like a country club pimp. And when he came up there, he said, "You don't know me, do you?" I said, "No, where did we meet?" He said, "In the Albany jail." He said, "I'm Sergeant Hamilton." I said, "Damn, you lost more than 100 pounds, because you were over 300. He said, "Yeah," and he smiled, and he said, But I'm grateful that you and I had those talks. He said, because as soon as you left Albany, I found this ad in a magazine that they were looking for somebody to manage security. And I put my family in the back of my station wagon, got us a U-Haul trailer, and 2 weeks after you all left Albany, we left. And I said, well, you're going to be almost over 10 years. He said, yeah. And he said, it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. He said, my kids are going to some of the best schools that they never could have found in Albany. My wife loves it. I've lost 100 pounds. And I say, you clean. But I'm saying that we have changed lives all over the South. And we are not trying to be equal to our adversary. We're trying to create a situation where both of us get better than we are, because we are able to relate to each other in spite of our differences. Now, that was the climate. We got back from Albany and we found some money missing. And we finally figured out that the guy that we had hired as our bookkeeper and controller was stealing. And he was not only stealing from us, but he was reporting what we were doing to the FBI. And I said, should we let him go now? Or should we wait till we find somebody to take his place? He said, no, don't fire him. He said, when you come right down to it, it's good that he knows just how much money we don't have. And everybody thinks we're doing this for the money. And we ain't got no money. See? And he said, but tell him that we're going to deal with him, not by firing him, but I'll get one of my boys to kick his behind if I'll catch him sending girls to Las Vegas on our plane tickets. So we had all kinds of nigger mess. And we were coming out of it, see? And so we never fired him. When there was a rumor that Brother Withers was getting money from the FBI police to tell what we're doing. So we asked Dr. King, they started talking about what should we do? And he said, nothing. He said, I'll talk to him. He said, he doesn't know what they're doing with us. Him telling us the truth, telling the truth. And he said, remember, if it wasn't for Ernest Withers, there might not be a Jet and an Ebony. If they didn't have a Jet and an Ebony, we might not have a movement. Because there was Jet and Ebony and the Daily World, and we had started a new newspaper here in Atlanta. Pittsburgh Courier. It was the black press. But the black press was dependent on these freelance photographers that were going around. And we never complained and never thought that they were hurting us, that they were part of our movement. And we were very tolerant about our relationship to the government. I remember that the first move that made Atlanta the city too busy to hate was Daddy King being asked by the Woodruff Foundation, that's Coca-Cola's money, if he would serve as the co-chair of Economic Opportunity Atlanta. And he said, oh, I'd be glad to. And he said, and they said to him, you know who I'm going to ask to be the other co-chair? He said, no, it doesn't matter. I'll take care of my side. And he said, well, you ought to know that I've asked Calvin Craig of the Ku Klux Klan to be the co-chair with you. And he said, we get along all right. We'll make it. He said, I've been dealing with crazy white folks all my life. And they served together for almost 4 or 5 years. And we wouldn't have had MARTA, and we wouldn't have had a lot of peace and prosperity if we hadn't gotten black and white together. And so it's very, Jesus was on the cross with the thief and the robber. And he looked at them and said, this day you will be with me in paradise. And I mean, before I went to see Lyndon Johnson with Martin, I didn't like Lyndon Johnson because he was a hick from Texas. And I was very prejudiced against him. And when we sat in there and talked to him, we sat in the Oval Office there with him, just the three of us. And everything we asked him, he agreed with us. He said, yeah, I really wish I could do that, but I just don't have the power. And when we left, well, just the two of us, so I was calling Martin. And I said, Martin, the president is right. He doesn't have the power. And you just need to take a sabbatical till the next election. Because, see, Kennedy had just been shot. And I never know what's going on in our government. So everybody was guilty as far as I was concerned. But Martin's attitude was, no, we got to get the president some power. That's the only time I called him nigger. I said, you Morehouse niggas are full of shit. You got a pot to piss in or a woman to throw it out of, and you gonna get the president some power. I don't know what they feed y'all over there in Morehouse.
Ambassador.
And he ignored me and just kept saying, no, we got to get the president some power. We got back home on a Friday. Monday morning, we get a call from Amelia Boynton in Selma. And she says she's on her way over. She's got to talk to Dr. King. And they show up in our office and she says, we got to do something. And she told the story of how Jim Clark was beating up everybody. And he was worse than Pritchard. And
Ambassador, I don't want to cut you off. I'm about to be in trouble. Okay. Because I've got to get you to another appointment.
That was the 1st of January, the 2nd of January, when we got there. The 5th of March was Bloody Sunday. And 7th of March. And the next week, by the 15th of March, President Johnson was on television saying that he was introducing voting rights legislation. And he introduced 2 civil rights bills. And in 90 days, Martin had given him the power with the people marching from Selma to Montgomery. And so We know that the Lord works in mysterious ways. And we decided that we're going to stick with the Lord. And that some of his children might stumble, but it only hurts us when we don't repent and keep on moving.
Everybody, join me in thanking a living icon. He will be 94 years old on March 12th, 2026. Ambassador Andrew Young.
Thank you, Ambassador Young.
Everyone, we're going to. There's one last order of business here before we leave. I have 3 rapid fire questions, and I'm gonna do them quickly. I grew up in the AME church, y'all. I learned a long time ago that you don't interrupt anybody, especially Ambassador Young, saying anything. But I have 3 things that we need to discuss very quickly. So Malika, my first question to you. The King Archive, right? Something we know about here in Atlanta, but I imagine it's a whole lot of work to archive and keep all of these memories. Talk to us a little bit about the work that's going on at the King Center.
So Mrs. King and Dr. King actually began to talk about an archive before Dr. King was assassinated. Cynthia Patterson-Lewis, our director of archives, who couldn't be with us today, often says that Mrs. King was really wanting to get Dr. King's books out the house. And so they began to talk not only about the immense books and volumes in his library, but they also began to talk about codifying this message of nonviolent social change and nonviolence. He did that work initially in Stride Toward Freedom, but there needed to be a place to keep the collective wisdom of the movement together. And then, of course, Dr. King is assassinated, and what she does in the first thing was to establish the King Center, which was the King Memorial Center at the time, and the first program of the King Memorial Center was the King Library and Archives, but at the time was the Library Documentation Project. She moved quickly to reestablish relationships or to reach out to the leaders of the SCLC, Southern SNCC, to reach out to members of CORE and find out would they consider donating their papers to the archive. By 1969, most of what you'll see in the King Library and Archives had already been committed, and people were interested in holding on to this history. One of the things that she said on her book tour was that we needed to hold on to our history so that it could be not retold by anybody else. She was incredibly prescient and understood that our responsibility was to hold on to our story, because we know in many of the pictures that your father took, the stories had already been manipulated in real time in his life. And so if we didn't have this physical archive, this memory, this collective memory, this truth telling, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing today. Ambassador Young would be our only memory. Right now we have 10 the organizational records of more than 10 organizations, 200 oral histories, and most recently, we've digitized 9,000 assets of audiovisual, going back as early as 1955, of Dr. King's speeches and sermons, anything that the SCLC members did. That is now, it's not quite yet available. We're doing the work to get it available. We're in the same 1% you are. But we're working really hard to make that available. And so the work of the archive, in addition to maintaining archival standards for the past 40 years, Ms. Cynthia Patterson-Lewis, our Director of Archives, she opened that archives and she still's there today to make sure that our archive is of the highest standards and to make sure that the stories that we need to move forward in the future, the stories that we need to tell to have the past accurately recorded, are held in complete and held as whole.
We appreciate the work that you're doing, sincerely. Eric, my next rapid fire question. You are the licensing manager for the estate of Martin Luther King Jr. I want to talk about IP. Right, it's a discussion that I think a lot of times comes up in the context of enforcement. But talk to us about what intentional strategies you have to continue to monetize and leverage all of the records and all of the assets that you have available to you.
So Ryan, quickly touching on, before I get in kind of the technical aspects of my role as General Counsel of the King Estate, I want to take a slight quick departure and talk about the practical importance, right, of us preserving these legacies, right? One of my favorite quotes from Mrs. King's, and I'm paraphrasing, but she spoke a quote similar to what Uncle Andy said, was that freedom is not free, right? It's earned and fought for from generation to generation, right? So I was recently at the Congressional Black Caucus on a panel. Obviously, the venue was around the corner from Howard, right? And as I was walking on stage, it hit me that freshman and sophomore class at Howard, for 2/3 of their lives, they've seen a black family occupy the White House and a black woman serve as vice president, right? Now, on the one hand, that should make them feel invincible and know that, with God, you can accomplish anything, right? But then on the flip side, my concern is that if we don't make sure these babies know their history, what we're currently experiencing from this current administration, they'll be shell-shocked and feel paralyzed like, oh my God, we've never seen this before, what shall we do? Them babies need to know we've been here, done that, got the t-shirt, right? And we know how to overcome what we're currently facing, right? It was Dr. King who talked about, the three evils, right? Poverty, racism, and militarism. You think about this current administration, right? There's no new problems. There's only new perpetrators, right? So there's new perpetrators purveying the same old problem, right? So I wanted to start there in terms of the importance of understanding why our history, right, which is not only black history, it's American history. Stop allowing them to make you think this is somehow in a box called black history. It's American history, right? First and foremost. Now, in terms of my role as General Counsel of the King Estate and from the IP perspective, let's first get into the definition of IP, right? So we'll start with photographs, right? Many people don't understand there's two sets of rights in a photograph, right? There's two symbiotic rights. The first, in this example, is owned by the Withers estate, right? And that's the ownership of the actual copyright to the photograph itself. The second set of rights is the underlying image rights to the subject in the photo, right? Always use an example of Beyonce to make it plain for folks. A photographer, a paparazzi can take a picture of Beyonce, and they can sell it to whoever, right? They can sell it to Gucci. Do you think they can give Gucci the right to now make Beyonce the new face of their next line? Right. So let's first of all understand, right, what intellectual property is. Second, understanding the establishment as it relates to Dr. King's intellectual property, right? Dr. King hired a literary agent in the 1950s to copyright his books, right? It was Dr. King who in 1978, following the I Have a Dream speech, sued a record company called Mr. Maestro because they had started distributing copies of his I Have a Dream speech, right? So when people say things like, and sometimes criticize the estate of the King family and say, well, Dr. King would want his, it was one of his inspirational speeches out there. True, he wanted the I Have a Dream speech out there. But he wanted to be the one to control his IP, right? So he subsequently won that lawsuit and then did a deal with Berry Gordy and Motown. Right? So then it was distributed, the record, the phonographic record of the speech, copy of the speech, was distributed through Motown. If you don't own your intellectual property, right, then Dr. King couldn't strike that deal with Motown. Think about how important that was for not only him, right, and us as a country, but also even for Motown and Berry Gordy. Right? So if you don't own your IP, you can't do those types of things. So the importance of protecting your IP is that, now getting to the monetization, your question, right? I never understand the sometimes criticism of legacy families as it relates to the royalty and monetization of that legacy, right? So you'll go to the barber shop or a beauty shop to get your due done or get your hair cut, and then you come home with a nice hoodie of Dr. King or Malcolm X or Medgar Evers or whoever. Right? You have no problem with Calvin at the barbershop making $25 off that hoodie you sold. But if the King or the Evers or the Shabazz X family, collect 10% of that, it's a problem. I never understand that, right? But think these historic men and women of the legacy did not leave much behind monetarily speaking, right? Their most valuable asset was their intellectual property. Everyone understands the other King. Everyone understands when the Presley family monetizes Elvis's records and legacy and image. But they don't understand when the other King's family benefits from it. Right? They're just not complaining, I just don't understand. Maybe y'all can help me with that. So it's important that we support us, right? That we support our legacies because one, history is being rewritten, right? And two, with the advent of AI, they'll create whole new speeches that don't exist. That you fast forward 5 years and our 10-year-olds think, oh, Dr. King said, or Malcolm X said X, Y, Z. It could be the complete opposite of what they said, or complete opposite of everything they stood against. But if you don't own your IP, if you're not on top of protecting your IP, you can't safeguard against the bastardization, right, of our history.
Wow. Don't play around with Eric, is what I just learned. My last question in our rapid fire, and again, the person that brought us here together, I'm talking about you. Okay. I guess I'm ready. Try to follow all this. Talk to us about what this effort is. What is the legacy line? Why is this company? And calling it a company almost feels a little short. It's a movement. Yeah. Talk to us about this movement that you're building.
So I put the picture back up behind me showing parts of Roz's archive, and I'll tell you how we met. A friend of mine at Microsoft called me and said, I'm working with this amazing family who's trying to find a way to use technology to better archive these pictures. He said, do you happen to know somebody that can help us solve this project? And for those of you who know me, I always say yes, right? So we jump on a phone call. I'm like, what the heck is this, right? It's amazing. Happened to be fall break, so we literally cut our vacation short, and I take my kids to Memphis. And Roz walks us around the museum, and we see the pictures like you see in the back. But then she goes to a building outside, and I go to this room. And you guys earlier, she said only 99% hadn't been digitized. The pictures are one thing, but like just imagine you walk into that room in that moment and you see all these pictures in a room and you realize that if we don't do something about this, all this history could disappear. So that was kind of the conundrum that we had. Like most of our legacy families and organizations, we typically support our initiatives through donations and through grants and maybe government programs that we don't control. So I told Roz, I said, Roz, this is an amazing asset that we have here. We have to find a way to monetize this so we can kind of control our destiny, right? So that ultimately, this was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, but to show you now, that's become this, right? So we built this company called The Legacy Line, and the idea is that how do we, to the point that Eric made, how do we build an enterprise that can monetize on our legacies in an ethical way, right? So at its core, if you walk around the back, you see all these amazing kind of home decor products that we actually make, build, design, and manufacture. We talk now about how our stories can't be told. So if you look at most of these pictures through our phones, we actually tell the story using technology. We actually created an augmented reality version of Roz's father and his voice. When I first played it for her, she cried because it sounds just like him. So her dad is telling a first-person narrative of these stories that we control. But behind us, you look on the room and you can see we've been working. Like, these are pictures of the team. So there are 15 or 20 people that are working on this every day. So this is, for those of you who know me, I typically do a lot too much myself, but this is the first time where I've actually, yeah, and the team is, raise your hand, the team is in the room, and they're around, but like, yeah. Yeah. So working with Roz and her team and our team, we've become a family. And if you see here, this is Genesis. So that video that's looping, we went to a trade show, African American Association of Museums in Charleston. And we thought we were just going to go there and show stuff and then have bookstores come in and buy these products. But every time they saw it, somebody wanted it. So much so that first evening, I had to go back to my hotel room and build a Shopify site to sell from the floor. And that kind of hit the conversation off. But plainly put, now this is in place, what is the legacy line? We're working with these legacy families to put together arrangements to where we can monetize and have those families benefit, right? That's the opportunity.
Mr. Brilliant here. Isn't that beautiful? One of the things in our many conversations where this intellectual property, as was so eloquently described by you, Eric, it belongs to us, right? It is by us that it has been developed for us. FUBU, let's do this again. Okay.
I think that is a perfect place to end this discussion. I want to seriously thank all of you, not just for today's contribution, but for the work that you're doing day in and day out, for the hard work that's happening when folks aren't able to see what necessarily it takes to make all of this happen. I'm going to ask these folks to spread out across this room. If you have a specific question, please go and find them. If you have even more questions, use that QR code. Y'all, this is important, right? I really do not want us to lose the significance of being in rooms like this. It's emotional for me to talk about it for too long, because the idea of being able to assemble in a place like this together, well, we know that our history tells us that this was illegal, right? This was contested for a long period of our history. So thank you sincerely for taking the time to come and listen and learn. As I said as he was departing, Ambassador Andrew Young will be 94 years old on March 12th. I would say this if he was still here, but I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. So the idea that he can go through, right, such important moments in such extraordinary detail, we've got to treasure that too. So you have one more thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can't do something like this without giving some cool announcements. I want to do a couple things. One, we talked about the importance of these legacies, and as Eric said, you have to have these NILs to do it ethically, right? So just want to let you guys know that we have actually inked a deal to where Legacy Line can ethically produce products in partnership with the King Estate, right? So that's in place. But the power of this is that a lot of those pictures exist in the Withers archive. So going back to that conversation, I met her through Microsoft, and we have a joint venture to produce these products with her father's images, right? Working with Ms. Evers, we're close. So we have an MOU in place. It's not inked yet, but it's coming, right? So these type things are happening. Everybody you saw on the stage said this is family, right? We're having conversations in the front row. Stand up for a second real quick. So this is the real AI. So this is Ann Iverson, Allen Iverson's mother, right? So she's here. Again, she has an amazing legacy. We're working on those pieces. So you can see how over time we're going to work to make these things happen. And then lastly, I wanted to say, one of the first ways we came together with Roz and her family, you guys walked around and saw this box in the back. So this is a curated collection of amazing pictures and images that you guys can get. By helping us buy these boxes, we can get that 99% digitized. And it's a very simple process. If you literally scan that QR code, it'll add it to your cart. you can have that, and you can go home with your box today, right? So when you see us out there, just know that we're doing this for real. We're doing it for a purpose. We're trying to transform communities, and we're working with families who you guys know and trust to make sure that they're not just a trending video on the internet, that they actually are benefiting from the work that they're doing. So I just wanted to kind of mention some of those things.
No, I think it's powerful. Please check out all of the work that's in the back and engage with this company, right? This is the sort of company, a real live test case for this show. I pulled a photo of my grandfather before this conversation started. I think, do we have that photo? It's hard to become something that you have not seen before. That's Ambassador Young.
I didn't know y'all were related.
No, that's not my grandfather. It might come up here. But the idea that I can take this photo that we have of my grandfather, who was a movement leader in his own right, and be able to do the things that we see here in the back of the room, it's really, really powerful. So thank you again. Please meet these folks throughout. Yes, please.
Can I just say one thing? I met the whole legacy group, well, most of the legacy group in Memphis. And I just have to tell you, coming from a mother who's very picky about her stuff, this is high quality. I had to explain exactly what was coming through without showing her. And trust is key. We trust them. They deliver, and they deliver top-notch items. I just had to make sure that my pillow is out there somewhere.
We actually got something else for you too. 1 second. We have special gifts. So Corey, where's Corey? Raise your hand, Corey. So Corey's our chief of product, and just for this occasion, we've got some special gifts for each one of you that's about to come to the stage. So where's my boxes?
Thank you.
And Ryan, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't end during these current times that we're living in and current challenges that we're facing, if we didn't remind everyone, as you watch the news and as you stay abreast of current events, it's so easy to get heavy burden, as they say. But it's important for us always to remember, as we learn through the movement, we shall overcome.
Amen.
Amen. Everyone get home safely. Meet somebody that you don't know in true gathering spot fashion. We're going to exchange some, that's very kind of you, very gifts. But meet these folks after we get done. We'd love to answer questions you have.
So
thank you.
Raina wanted her pillow. Raina, open this up and show the crowd. This is a one-on-one. And so Corey had a cool idea. This is an etched stone metal clock. Right? And a picture of her father. Raina. You guys got to get back to the King family. We got one of the hug.
Oh, great.
The King family.
Thank you, sir.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
We'll make sure that Andy gets his. One for Andy. And that one. And then with John's coming later, we'll get his.
No, we have one more dignitary that has joined us. Mr. John Hope. Oh, he's right here in the front. Everyone, John Hope Bryant. Please come join us for a second. We have a gift for you.
Wow.
Oh my God. Y'all got me bald headed. Whatever you want to do.
Is that working?
Ryan said, it's just goodbye, we're leaving. In other words, don't be long. You never want to be the old guy in the club. You can't be around Ryan and have low self-esteem. Ryan's like, you don't have to go, but you got to get the heck out of here. I said, Ryan, I just got here. Ryan is doing an incredible job around the country building sustainability. I keep talking about the new movements in the suites, not the streets. You cannot have a move in the suites unless you have some place to meet. And he's created a place for us to meet in civil rights. So thank you, Ryan. And thank you, young lady. What am I doing?
You're going to tell us how we are connecting these dots in such a way that economic inclusion and prosperity is in the room.
You know, it's always the free speeches that wear you out. if I was paid for this, they'd have a green room and some food. I come in here, they'd hustle me to 3 different rooms. I try to grab some food, he said, no, that's for somebody else. I grab a burger, put it in my mouth, they grab it from me, no, you gotta go speak. Rosalind needs you right now. They said they gotta see for you up. They go see Ambassador Young. I go see him. I say hello to him. Oh no, he gotta do an interview. And they pull me out. Oh no, we need you in here. You can rest inside the meeting. Come inside the meeting. I stand there for 2. No, we got to see the few upstairs. I go sit. No, we got to get you on stage. Then they hand me something with a bald head on it, which is beautiful, by the way.
We love you.
It's always the free speeches. I'm gonna charge you next time. I mean, you treat me better. You treat me. If I send you an invoice of $50,000, you might treat me better. I love you all. Boy, if you don't laugh, you won't go crazy.
I'm telling you.
You better learn to laugh. You better have a sense of humor.
Yes.
Ambassador Andrew Young taught me that. Learn to laugh at everything. This stuff's funny. People ask me, I was in Minneapolis last week, which is like the new civil rights movement, like just white people. They're like, what do we do? Like, y'all doing all right. You're doing just fine. Ambassador Young is proud of you. Like, oh, this is all new to us. This is great. I was in Minneapolis and I was in Maryland before that. And everybody's like asking this question, like, I gotta make sure I gotta scan the audience first. Is this being streamed? I gotta watch what I say. Somebody said no because they want me to talk straight. But y'all know this is being streamed. You try to get me in trouble. So I'm gonna say it anyway. So they asked me, Roz, it's like, what should we do? Talking about what's going on in Washington. I'm like, what do you mean, what should you do? This is not your problem. This is their problem. You missed that. This is not your problem. Don't make it your problem. They'd love for you to become the caricature. They almost had you, by the way. I say you because it was never me. They almost had you. They said, oh, DEI. Remember last year, DEI? I said, wait, slow down. We're fifth on the list. Why are we getting all worked up about DEI? Women, Native American Indians, vets. I mean, we're fifth on the list. But they wanted to make us the poster child. So it would trigger racially energy that then creates this us versus we narrative. I'm like, no, leave all that alone. You got the biggest reality TV show in the history of the world. And every day is a new show. No, every day is a new episode. Am I lying? It's wearing you out. You're exhausted just watching the TV. And that's what they intended to do. Flood the zone, wear you out so you're not paying attention to what's going on over here. So what I have to say, Roz, look, beyond ignore the noise, 90% of all GDP, gross domestic product, comes from cities. I'm gonna slow this down and say this again. We're in the biggest economy in the world. Sole superpower, United States of America, $30 trillion a year. By the way, a third of which are women. A third of the 30 trillion comes from women. So in 1972, when a woman did not have the right to vote, even a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes could not, sorry, not the right to vote, couldn't get a bank account in 1972, and couldn't get a loan unless her husband co-signed it. Not 1872, 1972. A white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes could not, she knows what I'm talking about, in 1972, could not get a loan, could not get a bank account. It was affirmative action from blacks. So it was President Kennedy, President Johnson, honorary President Dr. King. That did the work on affirmative action. That was teed up for our pivoting into the economy, finally. They said, that's too much for y'all. That's too much progress at one time. Kennedy, Johnson, King triggered Nixon. I don't know if you follow Nixon got reelected. By the way, go 100 years before that, Lincoln triggered Johnson, if you know your history. All right, Johnson was his vice president, Southern segregationist. Barack Obama, don't say it, triggered, don't say it, something else. But go back to this, so we're in the third Reconstruction now. Right, did that go over your head? No. The first Reconstruction was freedom. Second one was access, social justice, civil liberties. The third Reconstruction, economics and ownership, and opportunity for all. The second Reconstruction, in every Reconstruction, there's pushback. Yes. You have this progress. Somebody says that's too much. Yeah. Right? We tend to overplay our hands. This last time, we overplayed our hands. Talking about white people. You finally can curse somebody out in 2022, and we went OFF. I kept telling everybody, shh. Went too far. They got upset, pushed back. But that happens with every Reconstruction. So you should be upset. You shouldn't be surprised. It's on schedule. All of this is on schedule. But God still sits on the throne. And this country cannot succeed without people of color and women. So the point I'm thinking about women was women were denied access because of blacks. So Nixon gave the affirmative action to women. First it was white women, then it became black women, Latina women, Asian women, and all women. Women are today $8 to $10 trillion a year in GDP to this country, which is a third of the U.S. economy. So we had made the wrong decision on diversity in 1972. This would be a second-tier country in the world today. We would not be you've never had a superpower that wasn't the economic power at the same time in the history of the world. Did you get that? Ever. We would not be 30 trillion without women. That would have happened without blacks and the civil rights movement and the second Reconstruction and what they call affirmative action. Now we have to upgrade our software. And we have got to move from black and white and red and blue to green. It's always been about green. And we've been doing so much with so little for so long, we can almost do anything with nothing. And Ambassador Young would say, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. He said to live in a system of free enterprise and not to understand the rules of free enterprise must be the very definition of slavery. And there were two of Dr. King's aides that pivoted to economics. Now, your dad was already actually involved in economics because he was a businessman. He owned the photography. That was a business. So he was doing business in the 60s. And if truth be told, Dr. King wouldn't have had a PhD in 1958 had it not been for his parents who were upper middle class and wealthy, and grandparents, A.D. William and Daddy King, who owned land and businesses around what you now call the King Center. Am I going too fast? No. The only reason there's a King Center today, because it didn't get created for half a decade after Dr. King's assassination, is they control the land. Yes. Coretta Scott King and the King family controlled the land. That goes back to A.D. Williams. That's economics. That's business. You don't get a PhD in 1958, 1952 as a black man on charity. You get that because somebody paid for you to go to college and then graduate school. That's upper middle class. So we're a little late on this memo, but Dr. King was pivoting toward economics in the Poor People's Campaign. You got all this literally on tape. You have it all filmed. I Am a Man. That was all Dr. King coming back to Memphis to try to trigger this final movement, which you have completely, I think no one else other than your dad has this completely documented and digitized. And there were two leaders that decided that Dr. King said, look, I need you guys to go to economics and politics. Ambassador Young, his senior aide, is the only leader with Dr. King that became a leader of a city and has turned Atlanta to the international city of the South. They're telling me to wrap it up. Somebody is. Oh, okay. That's okay. I tell you, it's a free speech. I'll stop right now. You want me to finish this or stop? So I don't know. Ryan was trying to charge me a meeting fee if I go too much. So Ambassador Young went on to bring the Olympics to Atlanta. That's business, by the way. Went on to join the board of Delta Airlines. That's business, by the way. Got Delta Airlines. Don't fall down here. They don't have insurance. All right. We got limited insurance. And Delta Airlines went to Africa for the first time because Andrew Young was on the board. That's business, by the way. And the most profitable route in Delta's entire route schedule is Africa, South Africa, and Nigeria. That's business, by the way. Dr. Andrew Young brought $70 billion of foreign investment as mayor here and turned this into the only international city in the traditional South. That's business, by the way. And Birmingham should have been Atlanta. It was named after Birmingham, England. It was a bigger city, had more population, but they were messed up with a backwards business model, talking about that's my water fountain and that's your water fountain. Some stupid racism is like scientifically, mathematically stupid, right? Wait a minute, you'll take 100 customers and turn it into 50. You only want money from 30 people, you dummy. So Birmingham, Alabama, has a great mayor now. Memphis could have been Atlanta. There's all these cities. Montgomery, Alabama, that was Wall Street. Yeah. Don't believe me. Lehman Brothers was founded in Montgomery, Alabama. Because that's where the money was, and that's where the slave trade was. I'm getting off tip. Anyway. So Ambassador Young was the first aide of Dr. King to turn the theology into an economy. And Atlanta today is the biggest economy. It is black. My wife calls it Wakanda. There is no city like Atlanta in the world. And by the way, the economy is bigger than Singapore. $580 billion a year. You all are history makers. Did you hear what I just said? The city of Atlanta. Wow. Economically, is bigger than the country of Singapore. Jesus. Wow. Yes. And this is a professionally run, this is not a black city, it's a great city that happens to be run by a coalition led by black people. And you can take 3 states around Atlanta, states, put them together, put them inside the city of Atlanta economically and still have room. And what's the other accolade of Dr. King that went on economically? Reverend Jesse Jackson. Operation Breadbasket. Operation Push, I believe it was. Wall Street Project. They gave me an award 2 years ago. I went to go speak for him in Chicago last year. And he this morning goes and joins the ancestors. You can't make this up. So this is your time. But this lady is documented. She's dedicated she's just like my friend Bernice King, given her whole life for folks who are basically ungrateful. All of us. Thank you very much. Please give her some love. She wears me out. I mean, she calls, texts, emails, shows up at the front door of my house. I wake up in my dreams, she's standing there. Always begging for something. But it's really funny because, you feel obligated. The way she presents it is like, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Then you realize she ain't paying me nothing. In fact, I'm sending her money. I mean, she's really good. But she loves her daddy. Yes. And she loves her people. Yes. And she loves our history. Yes. And this newest strategy of digitizing it and monetizing it and turning it into something that we can put on our walls and on our doorsteps and on our tables and talk about it, is really, really quite smart. And I want Dr. Bernice King, who's not here today, who gave her whole life. You think about this. She can't change her name. Right. She can't. I mean, we can go marry somebody, whatever, change her. She's Dr. Bernice King forever, and she's done it with dignity and grace. Yeah. And here comes Rosalind Withers, who wears you out, reminding you of our history, and I just love it. And I think the least we can do is buy a cup and a licensing. Whatever it is, I'm gonna buy one of each. And I just want to come here and say that you're living in a moment in history. Yes. Wow. Very cool. Right now. Yes. But history does not feel historic when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day. But that does not mean the moment was not historic. Please know this. 2 minutes? No, man, I stopped. No. Keep going. I don't have a self-esteem problem. I stopped. I got other problems. I don't have that one. Look, I just want you to understand the moment. Because Dr. King lived in this city and traveled for 13 years in the civil rights movement. 6 million air miles, 12,000 speeches, 13 years, crisscrossing. He given the I Have a Dream speech 100 times before the March on Washington. That's why when he went to the March on Washington, halfway through the speech, Mahalia Jackson, standing to his left, said, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." Translation, "I'm tired of hearing this raggedy speech. Will you please rap?" And he said, and he went off script, "Black children and white children, Jews and Gentiles." That wasn't written on the paper. But he knew he had a repetition. He had to keep layering it in. But he got no respect in Atlanta. Yeah. He didn't get all this stuff done in Atlanta. It was every place else. They did not recognize how legendary this was. Even his own staff. When he was in Birmingham, and remember the letter from a Birmingham jail, which we all should reread every year? He wrote that on the margins of newspapers and toilet tissue. And he smuggled it out to Andrew Young, who he never wanted to get arrested because Andrew Young was a negotiator. He was the ambassador. Appropriate. And when it got to the office, Rosalind, the secretary by the way, same secretary is for Clarence Thomas. I don't know if you knew that. Dr. King's secretary was also for a long time Clarence Thomas' secretary. Can't make this up. I know because we're going to go see Clarence Thomas, me and Ambassador Young. You figure that out later. So Dr. King's secretary is typing this stuff up from the newspaper and from the toilet tissue, letter from Birmingham jail. Hold on now. Here's my whole point. She takes it. She balls it up. She throws it in the trash. She takes the original writing from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., from the toilet tissue and the newspaper. Priceless. You know that. Do you know today if that was at Christie's or some auction house? Are you with me? Yeah. So just one piece of tissue paper would be framed and auctioned for $1 million each. She didn't understand the moment. Yeah. She wasn't being disrespectful. She's thinking, this is another speech, it's another something. He does this stuff all the time. I got to pick up my kids. Right. I got to go home. Work's over. I'm staying over. She picked it up, balled it up, and threw it in the trash. I want you to understand this moment. Don't ball it up. and throw it in the trash. That's not Andrew Young you're meeting. That's Nelson Mandela. That's the closest you'll get to Nelson Mandela. Ambassador Andrew J. Young, you are history makers. This world can't survive without you. This economy can't thrive without you. You don't need to get angry. You don't need to get upset. You need to get busy.
I forgot one thing as well. For everybody in the audience, on the way out, we made these commemorative bookmarks. So on the way out, stop in the back and make sure you get one from a team in the back, okay? But please mingle while you're here. We have more time, but please mingle, connect with the team, and make sure they can show you how the technology works. But we thank you guys for joining the conversation today.
Thank
I can take it unless you headed straight there.
A lot of work to do too. We're working on our stuff. I'm working, never done. Well, you know, is that
Legacy Line is redefining how history is shared. We transform iconic moments into premium, everyday products. Art you can hold and stories you can unlock. Through exclusive collaborations like the Withers Collection. The unseen archive of Dr.